Welcome to Loren Reads to You. Today we're reading The Bedtime Killer by Loren Malloy. That's me. Make sure you're following or subscribing wherever you're watching or listening to this. And if you haven't watched or heard chapters 1 through 33 yet, you might want to go save this, go back to those, watch those, and then come back. Just a suggestion. Otherwise, if you're ready, get comfy, get cozy, and let's get into this. Chapter 34. Horace got up and almost threw up from the hit on the head and lack of blood. That bitch gave me a goddamn concussion, I bet. After a moment, he was able to start walking, still shaking his head and stumbling after her. His vision was still slightly blurry, but he saw Dee Dee was swaying and holding on to a small table in the hallway before the long staircase. She was still screaming, but her voice was beginning to go hoarse. He was almost upon her when she screamed, "Please, God, save me!" "No one can save you now, dear Dee Dee. Not even God. Why would you want anyone to save you from your lover? We're in love. How can you run from your man? You know you got yourself into when we first began our relationship. Now you're trying to deny my pleasure that you promised me. Your death will bring the love of your life, the happiness and satisfaction I deserve." Horace roared. "You're completely insane. I don't love you. I don't even know you. We are not now, nor have we ever had any kind of relationship. You are a sick fucking pervert, and I never promised you anything." Dee Dee's eyes were huge with fear. Blood had begun to dry on her face and neck, and one of her pupils were blown from the impact of that ashtray. She was still clinging to the table. "You're mine. You always have been since the first day we set eyes on each other in your backyard. You will not deny me. Now come here, my lady, because it's bedtime, baby." In a stunned shock and instant realization, she said, "You're my goddamn landscaper." Horace leaped at her in that moment, trying to use the epiphany to his advantage. What Horace didn't know was she had planned for that moment. Delia knew in her condition running was out of the question. He would have gotten her on the stairs. The whole time she clung to that tiny table, she was forming a plan to survive. She knew if she survived this, she would divorce that piece of shit husband of hers and move far away. She would live the rest of her remaining days, not wasting a moment of it in misery like she's been. She suddenly saw her new life so clearly, with such desire. She knew she wasn't dying there, and not by that creep. She knew she was completely naked and hurt. She knew she was vulnerable and weak. He was huge and batshit crazy. Massively batshit crazy assholes always win in the movies because the girl is running away or is more concerned with their own nakedness than the impending doom coming for them. She learned something from those horror movies, and in that moment she knew he's already seen her naked more times than she wanted to think about, and now he is also hurt. So she stalled and screamed, knowing it would draw him to her quickly, and throwing him, hopefully, off guard with panic at the possibility of cops or someone coming. Dee Dee knew no one would be coming to save her. The office phone was too far away. Her cell phone was behind the crazy killer in the bedroom, and the neighbors would never show up, besides the fact that they have a huge iron fence surrounding the place. No one was coming for her. She would either die by this pervert's hands like the ladies in those horror movies do, or save herself. When Horace rushed her, she was as ready as she could ever be. He lunged at her with both of his dirty, meaty fists, and as he did, she twisted away from him and pushed him at the same time. It projected him stumbling backwards at the same time, which he wasn't expecting at all. This caused him to lose his balance and crash down Dee Dee's long marble staircase. Every time his massive weight connected with one of the steps, there was a sickening sound of wet smashing and cracking of whatever body part or limb broke on impact. She watched him until he stopped in a revolting splat at the bottom of the stairs. Delia just held her breath and waited several moments for a sign that he was alive. Even if he was alive, he wasn't going to be running after her anytime soon. There were bones protruding out of his flesh, and his limbs were at unnatural angles. Delia slowly made her way down the stairs. She held the railing with one hand and a heavy bronze statue in the other. Every step she kept her eyes locked on the man bleeding out on her floor. She waited for some sign he was okay or was coming after her, but nothing. Dee Dee stood over him with the statue in hand, just staring for several seconds at the man. He was still breathing. She could hear his accordion sound wheeze. He was alive. Delia stared at the vile bastard for several, what felt like hours, just watching him slowly breathe in and out, before she began smashing the statue into his skull over and over again until she couldn't lift her arms anymore. Delia was covered head to toe in the man's blood, flesh, and brain matter, but she didn't seem to notice. He wasn't breathing anymore, and that's all that mattered. The killer's skull was now just a huge pile of smashed and mushed human matter. Bone, flesh, and blood were mixed all together on the floor and walls. Delia stood over the carnage that used to be a man, just staring at it and breathing very hard. After many minutes of what seemed like staring, hoping, waiting at her landscaper's dead body on her marble tile floor, the shock had begun to wear off. She staggered into the home office and poured herself a very large glass of Edward's bottle of Jack Daniels, the one he hoards only for himself. By the time the police showed up, Delia had already called her lawyer. It was after 3:30 in the morning when Delia sat on her husband's expensive beige couch covered in blood with a blanket wrapped around her and called Mr. Daring. "I've called to announce I'm divorcing you. And oh, by the way, I almost got murdered tonight by that peeping-tom turned serial killer you told me not to worry about because I was lucky enough that you wanted me, let alone any other men. The police are here, and since my lawyer made the police understand I killed that rat bastard in self-defense, I'm cleared of any possible charges. I am going to the hospital to get checked out now. Enjoy your secretary, that you thought I didn't know about. And my lawyer has already contacted your lawyer. Don't bother trying to fight me in court. I've been collecting proof of your different affairs with your secretaries for years. So goodbye, Mr. Daring, and good riddance," Delia screamed. She then hung up on the stuttering Mr. Daring and smiled. Detective Thorne said she was the local hero. Delia Daring had killed an evil bastard, and now she can begin to finally live. That was chapter 34 of The Bedtime Killer by Loren Malloy. We have one more chapter left, so don't miss it. If you're enjoying this book, make sure that you get it for yourself through paperback or Kindle through Amazon, as well as check out my 20 plus other books that are also available on Amazon. Make sure you're following or subscribing wherever you're watching or listening to this, and I'll see you for the epilogue.